Hi, Zach. Zach. Okay, excuse me. It's Sammy. I just wanted to do a sound check real quick.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you. So
Awesome.
we're waiting for one more counselor to get here so we have a quorum and then Mayor will start the meeting.
Sounds good.
He was supposed to. Alan Wells is coming. He's about 5 minutes out. I'll let him know that. He's coming. We have 2 people watching on the live stream already. And I don't know if it's recorded tonight. It's right there.
That's thank you. Hi, John.
We have a forum. We can go ahead and start.
5, I guess. Okay. Calling the city council meeting to order at 6:02, according to my watch. We are expecting one more counselor to arrive, but he should be here shortly. Pledge of Allegiance. Kyle, would you like to lead that tonight? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tammy, would you call roll, please?
Mayor Bill,
Here.
Counselor Blaine.
Here.
Counselor Engelbretson is absent. Counselor Fox.
Here.
Counselor Lehman. Counselor Wells will be joining us when he doesn't have technical difficulty. We're working on that.
Is he joining us by Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. And this meeting is a hybrid meeting, so we have in-person people and we have people that are joining us remotely. So the first item of business is mayor comments, and I'd like to read the Arbor Day proclamation. And I'll read it in its entirety. In 1872, Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day to be set aside for the planting of trees. The special day became known as Arbor Day, and it was observed by the planting of more than 1 million trees in the state of Nebraska. Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. Trees can reduce the erosion of precious topsoil by wind and water, lower heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and create woodlands and habitats for wildlife. Trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. Trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. In keeping up with the spirit of Sterling Morton's dream, I, Nancy Bell, Mayor of the City of Coburg, do hereby proclaim April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day in the city of Coburg. And I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support the efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. This 14th day of March, 2023. And of course, you can only plant a tree if you have room to plant it. The saying is the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time to plant a tree is today. So I hope you all enjoy Arbor Day and plant a tree if you can. Maintaining a tree board, the Coburg Park and Tree Committee is one of our commitments to making Coburg Tree City USA. And we have received that recognition for this year also. I just received that letter last week. We do have a tree care ordinance, and we are dedicating an annual community forest project of $2 per capita. So that's in your utility bills, and you know that. And we host an Arbor Day observance and proclamation. And usually we involve the kids from the school in planting trees. Are we doing that this year? We're gonna try. Okay, fair enough. So we want to maintain our beautiful city and maintain our trees. So our second proclamation tonight is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And this one is very near and dear to my heart. I'm an old pediatric nurse, and I can attest that there are children that are in danger every day in every community. Every child is a precious and unique gift who deserves the security of a healthy home. We all have the responsibility as individuals, neighbors, community members, and citizens of Coburg to create healthy, safe, nurturing experiences for children. Preventing child abuse and neglect is a community value that depends on the involvement and education of citizens throughout the community. Safe and healthy childhoods help produce confident and successful adults. Child abuse and neglect not only directly harm children, but the trauma can also increase the likelihood of health problems, alcohol and substance abuse, and continued family violence and criminal behavior. Effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships among social service agencies, schools, faith communities, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. We acknowledge that we must work together as a community to increase awareness about child abuse and contribute to promoting the social and emotional well-being of children in a safe, stable, nurturing environment. I, Nancy Bell, Mayor of the City of Coburg, do hereby proclaim April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month and call upon all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, and businesses to increase their participation in our events to support children and their families in living safe and healthy lives, therefore preventing child abuse and strengthening the communities in which we live. Claimed this 14th day of March, 2023. So the first National Child Abuse Awareness Month was declared by President Jimmy Carter in 1979. And 4 years, April, and 4 years after that, April was formally established as Child Abuse Prevention Month by President Ronald Reagan. So it's a bipartisan effort and continues to be. A staggering fact is that 1 out of 7 children in the U.S. has experienced physical or sexual or emotional abuse. staggering fact, and that means that right here in Coburg, we also need to be aware and do our efforts to prevent it. Thank you. Okay, so now we have the agenda review. And let's see, oh, I guess we could have, so agenda review, does anyone have any changes or?
So in your red folder, you guys will see a staff report. It's called the new greenhouse. It's an OLCC license for a new business in town. It's a new business, so those have to come to council for recommendation. And that's going to go into your packets at page 66. It will be discussed under the council action items. We also have pulled under the consent agenda. There's an employee housing agreement that's going to also move down to council action items and not be part of the consent agenda tonight. So there'll be more discussion on it. There's a staff report or a letter from Councilor Lehman in your red folder to add to that item. And the other item in your red folder is a copy of tonight's PowerPoint presentation that we are going to have from FCS.
Thank you for that clarification, Sammy. A red folder should be empty except for the presentation on our water rates. Okay, so we'll move those things. I end up with too many papers here sometimes, so I have to sort of sort through. So under the consent agenda at this, do we have any citizen testimony?
I have no one signed up, just the written testimony in the packet.
Okay. Yep. Has everybody had a chance to read the written testimony in the packets? Questions or? We appreciate it. We appreciate whether it's in-person testimony or if it's written testimony. So thank you for sharing those. No responses by council? Seeing any, so moving on, we have the minutes from February 14th. Changes, questions, clarifications on those. Councilor Lehman. Which page are you on, please? Okay.
I'm unclear where we're at.
So it would be on, it's on page 11, and it says Mayor Bell opened the topic, so it's 5.1. Mayor Bell opened the topic of the city administrator recruitment, saying that the council had considered 3 recruitment options and had chosen.
I can't hear.
Councilor Lehman is suggesting that he noted the inconsistency in the language of the contract and requested that the paragraph 3 be amended to not to exceed $8,500. Councilor Lehman noted
Yeah, could you check with the people online to make sure that they're hearing there?
Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you.
Okay. Usually I don't have that problem,
Yeah.
but
Great.
when I look down, I know that I am on the microphone, so please be on task. Any other corrections or additions?
What's that?
Hearing none. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda for the minutes of February 14th as amended. Fox. Seconded by Councilor Blaine. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? None, so we had,
Sorry. Alan, are you opposing?
No, I'm not. I'm raising my hand. I'm sorry. It was just I was a little late on the take.
Okay, going forward, we're just going to ask for your vote individually. Yes.
all right, okay. So we have 4 in favor and none opposed. So the motion carries. We do have a couple of special guests tonight. We have representing Coburg Main Street is Mr. Russ Hayworth. Mr. Hayworth, would you like to join us and tell us what's going on with Main Street?
Well, thank you very much. Again, my name is Russ Hayworth, serving as president of Coburg Main Street. I want to thank City Council for this opportunity tonight to update you on Coburg Main Street and the happenings and what we've been up to. We're proud to say we are now an established 501c3 nonprofit organization. There's a lot of work getting to that point, but we're there. And then also on another note, the Coburg Chamber of Commerce has been dissolved with assets acquired and accounted for by Main Street. And also I might add that the website from Chamber has been converted to the Main Street. So there's I believe it might be a link. If they hit Coburg Main or Coburg Chamber, it sends them to Main Street, or at least it should. In 2022, we put on numerous successful events with concerts in the park, combined with the farmers market. Of course, the ever popular antique fair, October Scarecrow contest, Harvest Block Party, and of course, Christmas in the park there in December. Into 2023, we recently held our executive board retreat at the Mount Tom House up on the Coburg Hills over here, and created a lot of dialogue and some goals for 2023. And some of those items include more art projects, welcome signage we talked about for the north approach into town from Coburg Road or North Coburg Road, and also from Coburg Road at the south end of town, match a little bit of what we see coming in from the east over by the truck stop. So just a way of developing a consistent look that everybody will like. Also in process of drafting a mural policy for Coburg, which is in the works. Also quilt art for the fence owned by Umbrella Properties over across from Pavilion Park, facing Pavilion Park. So we will have some nice quilt panel decorations that are going to be on that fence. So dress that up a little bit. Also created some new lamppost banners for seasonal display along Willamette Street, and they're kind of a Discover Coburg type of message at the headliner up on top with some really colorful, nice, appropriate artwork depicting shopping in Coburg, drinking, dining in Coburg, biking in Coburg, just kind of everything that people know Coburg for, you'll see on these banners. And they're seasonal, meaning that we'll still do, or the banners will still go up for honoring those veterans in the month of November. Also another event that's coming up in the May 20th is the date we're looking at. It's an event we're naming Sip and Stroll, and it's to promote and showcase businesses, art and antiques within the town of Coburg and kind of the local core businesses of downtown. And basically how the event would work is we would promote it, advertise it, try to bring local people from Coburg, the community, as well as outside community to come in, discover Coburg, discover the businesses, support those businesses while looking at invited guests that are bringing in artwork, and there might be some quilts involved with that too. And then the summer block party scheduled for June 17th is a street block party combined with first responders and an emergency preparedness event. I'm not quite sure what all the details in the emergency preparedness event will be, but I know there's a lot of great people out there that already know what that's going to be, and that'll be a community event that I think everybody needs a little refresher on of what kind of that what if factor of what if this happens or that happens. How can Coburg and the community be better prepared for the unexpected? Also, we've been in talks and communication with the Eugene Emeralds baseball team. They were approaching us about hosting a Coburg Day or a Coburg Night at a game, and that's tentatively scheduled for July 7th this summer. And more details will be following that as far as tickets and how that's all going to play out. But we'll keep you posted on that. Also, concerts in the park, we have decided to move that to a Wednesday night event from Thursday to Wednesday night. And that was mainly to not only to move it to midweek, but to accommodate and provide the availability of Coburg Fire Department personnel to somewhat be freed up or to be able to be on site, because Thursday night's conflicted with other obligations that they have. So Wednesday night concerts in the park, along with the farmers market. And we've expanded that schedule beginning in the middle, right before the middle of July, all the way through the end of August. And then there's been some discussion of maybe we have 2 or 3 Wednesday night concerts in late September after the antique fair, but we're not sure on that yet. Just in talking phases. Also, along with the concerts in the park, we've developed a sponsorship opportunities, and we also have pleased to announce we have a title sponsor already in place, secured, and then we will have the idea is to have presentation sponsors or presenting sponsors, which would be underneath the title sponsors. So effectively, a business or company could come in and sponsor that individual Wednesday night, and then the following week, so on. So if somebody else could have the opportunity to sponsor as well. And then another tier of sponsorship below that could be on site or through other means, sort of a friends and family or friends and neighbors of Coburg sponsorship. So people could donate anywhere from $25 in increments of $25 up to $100. So that's kind of some ideas we're looking at to try to generate and drive some revenues to cover our costs, as well as add to our income to be able to run other events. So that's kind of neat. Antique Fair also have looking at ideas for sponsorship opportunities in association with the Antique Fair, somewhat along the same lines, but probably a different structure, in that we wouldn't have a title sponsor, so to speak. It would be a series of sponsors at a lower level, but more of them to try to help out that event too. And then last but not least, Christmas in Coburg coming up next December. And we're looking at a few, seeing with the schedule a little bit to kind of accommodate an earlier start time for the light parade instead of waiting too long and and having a time lapse or a lag or a gap between events. So it'll be all the same events. It'll just be more of a condensed schedule that'll just kind of, once we have people here, we keep them here. So with that being said, Coburg Main Street would like to thank the city council for all of your support and all of what you do for this community. As president of Coburg Main Street and on behalf of our board of directors, we would like to ask for your financial commitment through tourism funds to support a full-time executive director position for Main Street. We'd like to request the amount of $25,000 plus benefits for this employee on an ongoing basis. At the same time, Main Street is applying for matching grant funds. We would ask that the employee also be officed at the city hall. We appreciate the city's assistance with housing our Main Street coordinator, providing past ARPA funding and supporting our projects and events in Coburg. And then I'm going to go off script here a little bit, but please keep in mind if, you know, we all hear about short staffing and staffing problems. And, you know, I think anybody that's in business has experienced it in some form or fashion. We all have those challenges, and finding good employees is hard. Keeping them is sometimes even harder. Tracy is a dream come true. It's hard to find somebody that'll dive in and do all that she's done and stick in there and be committed to all that the future leads in a role like that. We're really lucky to have her. So we look forward to your discussion, consideration, and ultimate decision on this. We appreciate the time. Thank you again.
Well, some exciting things coming up. Huh? You're doing good work too, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Next guest is Mr. Gabbert, who from Financial Consulting Solutions Group. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Gabbard is just fine.
Gabbert works. Okay.
We
Thank you
we
for-
can get all European and say Gabbard, but
No, we could,
no- nobody
but I'm not
does.
very good now.
no, that's fine. That's fine.
Council members, that presentation is also in the red folder. Though the PowerPoint is right there in front of us, we can probably do it both ways.
Wonderful.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Again, I am Doug Gabbard with FCS Group. I know it looks like I'm here by myself, but I am joined online by my crack project consultant, Zach Hazel. You can't see him, but I know he's there, and that is a tremendous comfort to me. So tonight we're going to, as we move to the agenda, my goal for tonight is to give you a reminder of utility rate basics, and then go over what, if anything, has changed in the rate analyses. And we'll also use that as an opportunity to explain how we've been working together with the city since last you've heard from me. So moving to the next slide. I did that on purpose.
Fast you can run.
All right. So utility rates are set to recover the costs of providing a service, and most of those costs that are being recovered fall into one of two categories. They can be operating costs, which tend to be very well behaved. They gently escalate and get bigger, and they're pretty easy to deal with. Where things get complicated are with capital costs. Capital costs are, and I kid you not, this is the official term, they are lumpy cash flows. That is what you will learn in your finance class. They are not well behaved. They are huge some years and they don't exist in other years. And that's a real challenge when you're trying to give ratepayers the smoothest ride you can. And so we have tricks to make it smooth, but when the capital program changes, we have to be quick on our feet to make sure that you accommodate it, get built what you need to have built, and still get the smoothest possible ride on the rates. That's quite all right. We all have the slide. So as you're looking on your paper, I'll look on mine. So as a reminder of what rates should do, Rates should generate sufficient revenues to sustain the utility system. It shouldn't be reliant on subsidies from outside sources, certainly not the general fund. It should charge for the cost of services provided. It should recover those costs as equitably as possible. People who use more should pay more. And also achieve city objectives, whether that be something like conservation or revenue stability, fund balances, other kinds of policies, policy on using debt, that kind of thing. As a reminder of what goes into a rate study, we have a little chart that shows the elements of it. And you'll notice that a number of things go into the rate revenue requirement, which is what we're calling the analysis that comes out with a series of percentage changes. The two things we've just been talking about, the capital improvement program on the left side and the operating budget on the right side, are the big elements. But there are also fiscal policies, that box in the middle, that's where we set our minimum fund balances and make sure you have enough gas in the tank at the end of each year so that you can go forward confidently into the next year. That little box off to the left side, system development charges, and system development charges play a fairly minor role in the rate analysis, but they are an offsetting revenue that contribute to your capital program and allow you to get some capital built with monies other than rate money. Now, I often get the question, well, gosh, if we raise our SDCs, can we give our customers a break on the rates? And the answer is yes, but not as much as you're hoping. So SDCs are typically a small portion of the overall revenues needed to build the capital. They come in over time, and it's not going to give you as much help as you think. But when growth assumptions change, as they have here, you not only do you have to take into consideration the effect that has on your rate revenue, but also less growth means less SDC revenue as well. So it's a little bit of a double hit. So let's talk about the revenue requirement analysis. I'm on slide 7 now. Oh, hey, we're caught up. That's awesome. So we'll start with the sewer utility on the next slide. I don't have much to say about the sewer utility. Let's go ahead and look at the table on the next slide. We don't have a new rate recommendation for you, and it has not changed recently. And yet, what you see in front of you is not what you saw 2 years ago when I was here on February 9th, 2021. Actually, I was not here. I was on the screen. So I should explain kind of how we've been working with the city. So 2 years ago, when you heard from me from the Jumbotron, we were wrapping up a rate study. And at that time, sewer needed a 2% increase one time and then didn't need anything after that. And then after that rate study wrapped up, we didn't go away. We just kind of went into the background. And since then, we have been working with city staff as needed to keep things up to date. And between February 2021 and now, there have been 2 waves of updating things. The first wave had to do with assumptions on growth and how they have been rolled back. When you last heard from me 2 years ago, there were some very aggressive growth assumptions. My recollection is these were expected commercial developments that were going to, am I getting that right, Ann? That they were going to generate tremendous SDC revenue, and also they were going to be big rate customers as well. So shortly after that rate study, it became clear that forecast needed to be adjusted. And so those growth forecasts for both water and sewer were rolled back to levels we thought were correct. And the result of that is now for sewer, not just a one-time 2% increase, but a series of 2% increases. And there has been no further change to sewer since that. That has been some time now, and you've probably actually already heard of it. But I wanted to remind you of what our last recommendation was on the sewer utility. So, absolutely. Yes, we did. And so, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But that is absolutely true. So we changed some assumptions because cost escalation is more significant than it was 2 years ago. So thank you. That's a good reminder. So moving on to the next slide are some comparisons. The current rate, sewer rate, being actually what it actually is today, rather than what it was supposed to be after a 2% rate increase, and also what it would be after the first 2%, or actually 2 rate increases, and what it should be now. Not much difference, and it doesn't really change your relative position. But we got to talk about water. So let's talk about water. The assumptions that you see before you are different from what you saw 2 years ago. And as Anne quite correctly said, the inflation factors that you see in the upper left quadrant are higher than what you saw in the slides 2 years ago. And so that has been changed. And also, as I explained earlier, not only were the sewer growth assumptions changed, but in the lower left quadrant, you will see the growth assumptions for water being significantly scaled back. The rest of the assumptions weren't changed that much, at least the operating assumptions. We haven't talked about capital yet, but in what you see now, that additional cost escalation and that rolled back growth assumption are playing key roles here. The rest of the assumptions aren't much changed. So let's talk about capital on the next slide. So back when we talked 2 years ago, you had a capital program that was gentle. It was still big, but it was gentle in the first few years, and then it ramped up later. Now we are staring down the barrel of a capital program that is highly front-end loaded. And that means that a slow, steady program of rate increases is not going to help you much, as I'm sure you can guess. We're looking at about $8.7 million in capital projects over the forecast period, the new forecast period. And in the period that we're looking at, it's higher than what it was before, and the projects are occurring earlier, as we mentioned. We know that we still have some more loan monies to get from Business Oregon. That is factored in. We work closely with staff to make sure that we were modeling that correctly. And we know that there is a need for additional debt. We've also worked with staff to make sure that any short-term debt issuances are already being thought about, because it's one thing for us to model debt in the near term, but it's another thing to actually do all the work to actually secure it. And so we have worked with staff to make sure that our assumptions are not unrealistic in that area. So the capital needs are significant, and they're a big driver of the revenue requirement analysis that you will see on the next page. So what we're looking at here is this can be difficult to interpret, but let me walk you through it. The columns are divided into segments. Each segment of each column represents a type of cost. At the very bottom, the baseline, you have that blue, those are the operating costs. Note how they gently rise over time in a very well-behaved way. Then you have some existing debt service that is also fairly well-behaved, but then you also have some new debt service. The new debt service starts right away because the new debt needs to start pretty quickly as well. And then in years where you can, I'm looking specifically at 26 and 27, you have an opportunity to build up funds, and then a lot of stuff is getting built in 28. So let's focus on the lines. The bottom solid line is the revenue that you would raise at current rates. Now, the last time we talked about this, that bottom solid line had a little bit more of a slope to it because of the growth assumptions we were using. Because even if your rates don't go up, your revenue still goes up by the amount of growth that you expect to experience. But if you don't expect as much growth to happen, those revenues aren't going to go up by themselves. So the dotted line on top that gently touches the top of each of those columns, that is the required level of rate revenue. And that the number above each column represents the percentage increase each year that would be required to get you to that level. And you notice that it starts with 12%. And that is assumed to happen on July 1st, 2023. So the beginning of the new fiscal year. From there, it backs off to 7% to 3.25% for multiple years. And then further down the road, down to the 2% that you're familiar with from sewer. Let me anticipate a question that I sometimes get. We try to get these rates increases as smooth as possible while still being adequate. Sometimes folks will see a big number at the very beginning and a smaller number after that, and they'll look and they'll say, gosh, 12 and then 7, that's 19. Can we say 9.5 each year and call it even? And the answer is no, you can't, because it's not even. Because rate increases have a compounding effect year over year. If you reduce the level of your first increase, you will need to increase the level of rate increases thereafter, because that revenue in that first year is just gone and you don't have it. Whereas early rate increases allow you to compound and mitigate future rate increases. So that's the punchline. 12% followed by 7, and then tapering off thereafter to meet those needs. We can see the effect that it has on your fund balances on the next slide. They get drawn down pretty quickly because your capital program is pretty front end loaded, and that fund balance is going to help you with that. And then you build up a little bit, but then you drop back down in 2028 because you got a lot of stuff to build. And then after that, things start to ramp up again. And part of the reason they begin to ramp up, because you might be looking at that at the right hand part of that chart and think, well, we don't need to build up all that extra cash. Why are we doing that? So when we model new debt that you haven't thought about yet, and haven't arranged for yet, we use pretty conservative assumptions just to make sure that any surprises are happy surprises to the extent that we can make that possible. And so in our conservative assumptions about what net new debt might look like, we model revenue bonds as the source of the financing. And revenue bonds, you're only pledging your utility revenue, so the full faith and credit of your city is not at risk. But one of the trade-offs is it comes with something called coverage requirements. And that coverage requirement requires you by covenant to earn more money in rates than you really need to operate your utility. Now, it's really only measured against operating expenses. So if you have some small capital, you can actually use that extra money in your capital program, and you wouldn't build up a fund balance in that situation. But if you don't have any capital to spend it on, that extra margin of money that you're required to earn is just going to sit there. And so until you begin to define some projects in the out years, that graph is going to look that way. I have no doubt that as time goes on, you're going to uncover projects that you're going to need to build, and the out years, I'm sure, will look quite different. So I'm not going to bore you by going over the details of this, but this is what the recommended rate increases look like when you smear them on your rate schedule. And you can, this goes on for 3 slides, and I won't go into it in detail. I will take you to the comparison on slide 18, kind of the last substantial slide. Yeah, look at it, look at it. And what is being proposed is not a huge change in your relative position. You were high on the high side before, you'll continue to be, not much change. That's what I got. I'm interested in what's on your mind.
Thank you, Doug. That's, we appreciate that breakdown. It's awe-inspiring.
Oh, shucks. I don't get a lot of that.
That's, that really sort of brings it home. I'll open it up to counselors. Any questions for Doug? Counselor
Just
Fox?
curious, why Springfield is not on here?
Ah,
Or just a question, because it's just a city.
yeah, I don't have a great reason for you. So these are the same. These are the same comparisons from the 2021, and Springfield sounds like a good one to add.
And so at 153.54 per month, where does that put us in the state of Oregon of feeling like Beverly Hills?
Well, doesn't it feel like Beverly Hills? Yeah. Statewide, you know, when you get to the metro area, things in places can get pretty expensive. I don't have an exact answer for you. But it's not. It's expensive. That's not an illusion.
And so is Eugene backlogged and eventually going to catch up with others? That's great.
Boy, you know, that's a great question, because that's why folks like me hate these comparisons, because, you know, every utility is different. They have different technical and geological and hydrological conditions and all that. But the other thing is, you don't know where everybody else is in their cycle of reviewing their rates. So for all we know, any one of these cities could be on the verge of a rate increase. That is just unknowable. We have not had an engagement with them for years. So we're not doing their rates.
Brian?
Yeah, so looking at the comparison, the thing I wanted to point out is every city on this is either slightly larger or extremely larger. And the reason why I say that is Doug talked about growth, right? And if we were growing at the right rate, these rates wouldn't go up here as much. So that's one thing to think about. It's hard to say, like Doug was saying, what their capital project list looks like for the future, especially small cities like that. We're in the boat that we're in because we need these capital improvements to be done. But these all have higher ratepayers or higher populations of ratepayers. So that's one thing.
So they have some economy of scale. Yep. They have more people that are contributing to the pot to make this happen. I also, and I would guess that this is probably true for many of our small cities, but Coburg had a lot of deferred maintenance in very tight financial times. And, you know, we're not out of the woods yet, but I think that there were a lot of things that just had to be put off, that they weren't the most pressing issues. And I think we're playing a little bit of catch up at this point.
That's probably the it would probably be echoed through every small city council.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Things are getting put off left and right. So, yeah.
And we certainly know that there are small cities that are in worse shape than we're in, that are looking at the same thing we are with multi-million-dollar projects, and certainly the inflation rate has not helped any of us in that. Our projects are much more expensive than any of us anticipated. Simon, did you have a question?
On slide 13 again. 15 years. Those are pretty flat. And does it also include the
I can't,
believe it does.
it does? Okay. So
I can't hear a thing.
Well, we're
Thanks, Ann.
So the growth projections do include the addition of Wykert homes, but that's really the residential lands that we have left. And it does include the east side growth, but initially that was projected to be built up a lot faster. And we know now that that's not going to be a fast build. There's all kinds of issues that are hurdles that are having to be jumped to get those lands ready for even advertisement for sale. So so that, yes, whatever we have that we know is out there is included in this. Now, there are lots around town that are for sale. We don't know. We don't know what's going on them. We did not include that at all because we just have nothing to base on what could happen.
And once you're out to fiscal 28 and 29, that the growth that you're expecting as a percentage of your customer base is just under 0.5%. So that's why it doesn't look like it gives you much help, and that line sure does look horizontal.
Unless, as Ann said, unless we had a major urban growth boundary expansion and opened up a lot of buildable land, we're pretty much tapped out. And I think we all know from past experience that expanding our urban growth boundary is not an easy thing or an inexpensive thing to even attempt.
Yeah, not necessarily the answer.
Right, not necessarily the answer. That's very true. Thank you, Doug.
Could I ask a question? I'm raising my hand virtually.
Yes.
I'm new to the city council, so help me with this question. But when the city of Coburg built the sewage treatment plant, it was my understanding as a lay citizen that we borrowed money to do that, and that money would be paid back. That loan, in effect, would be paid back over a 30-year period of time. Maybe I have the amortization incorrect, but I thought that was right. You took your forecast out to 2039, yet would it be helpful, I guess, in selling this increase to the general public that we take it out long enough that we can show that debt goes away? Because where we're starting from is already enormously expensive in comparison to other communities. And believe me, I hear it all the time from tenants who are renting apartment units. They're like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? There must be a mistake. $148 a month for water and sewer, that's crazy. But if I could say, well, yes, but we borrowed money to put this sewage treatment plant in, but look what happens in the year 2040 or 2047. Have you taken it out that far to show that there will be a leveling off of the increases at the very least, or even a lessening of the overall charges at that time?
No, we haven't. And so there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, as far as we have already gone out, it kind of strains credulity to think that anything is going to be that accurate out that far because things have a way of changing. And so we don't really know what's going to happen 5 to 10 years from now.
Yeah.
And so that's one reason, but a more quantitative reason is that the 2% that you see in the out years now, they work fine with all of the assumptions that we've made. But if you want to go to the deep out years, I would direct your attention to the upper left quadrant of slide 11, where you have all of your operating costs growing at 4%. What that means is your rate increases over a long enough time horizon will begin to converge onto that 4% slope. But that fact is beyond the current time horizon that you're seeing in this presentation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And I know going out too many years gets to be ridiculous, but for the average citizen, they're saying, well, why is it so high to begin with? Well, we can answer that by saying, because we built a sewage treatment plant. Well, when am I going to see some relief in the amount of money that we're having to spend each month? Well, I know it's ridiculous, but look at the year 2045 when a good share of that debt service drops off. It's a ruse, it's not real. I understand, but I mean, can't we go out that far to make this sell a little bit easier? Because this is a hard thing to swallow for anybody here.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
Counselor Wells, I think, and I think one of the things that we're all struggling with is that we can't know what that future holds. And we may be needing to do major water treatment overhaul by that point in time. So I don't know that we can say to our citizens, oh, look out here and you'll see those rates decreasing. I just don't know that we can say. I wish we could say that, but I don't know that we really can, in all honesty.
Yeah. I respectfully, I agree with you. I do. But there is a fixed cost that does drop off at a certain period of time, right? I mean, do we all agree on that? That debt service goes away.
Unless we have to do more capital projects.
Well, sure.
Not go away.
But agreed. But don't we sell that at that time, though? And sell, that's not the right word, but don't we discuss that at that time? But I'd like to be able to say to these people in my apartments that, hey, look, we understand it's really high, but bear in mind of this $148 a month, 30 of it or 40 of it relates to the debt service paid on that loan that we took out to build the sewage treatment plant. And that goes away in 2035. And leave it at that. Don't get into.
I just don't think it goes away in 2035.
Oh, boy.
I wish I could say differently, but I just don't think that will happen because I think we will have other costs that we will be looking at that point. So, Councilor Lehman had a question.
Council Lehman, I can't hear you. Can you pull the microphone a little bit closer? Thank you.
Just wanted to say that I like the comment. Can you hear me now, Mr. Black?
Yeah, better. Yes, thank you.
And what is our dollar amount?
No, I can't hear you at all.
I just asked what our dollar amount.
Yeah. I can't rattle that off right now. I'm sorry.
That's just not on the top of.
It's
of
not,
the
yeah.
answer.
I can
we'll have to
provide
get-
that to you at the next meeting, but to rattle that off, I would just have to look at it and let you know what we
We'll
do on
get
everything.
back to you on that.
Yeah, the one thing I did want to say on Doug's behalf is the city council asked for and we contracted FCS to build us modules that look out 20 years. And every year we update that and we add a year, we drop a year. And that's what FCS has been contracted to do based on what the council asked for. So I just wanted to say that on Doug's behalf, that he wouldn't have went out to 2045 because that's not what we asked him to do.
Sure.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes,
Counselor
Counselor
Wells, I appreciate the comment and the thought, but I don't know your runners, but I'm thinking they're thinking 2 years out into the future, and if you sell them on 2045, their eyes are gonna go like old TV sets.
Oh, I completely agree. I know what you're saying, but there is a fixed cost related to that sewage treatment plant that at least we'd be able to say, gosh, guys, I know it's high, but $50 of this relates to that, and leave it at that. I would have a hard time saying, well, don't think that the rates are going to go down any 35, 25 years from now. That's hard. I mean, anyway,
If
thank you for the indulgence.
if we could, if there was a way to soften that at all, I would, my prediction, if I were a betting man, and it all depends on what the over under is, I would not say that there would be a time that Coburg or most utilities will be able to lower their rates. I think what is the more likely scenario is that the chickens come home to roost for other cities at some point, and things begin to equalize more than they are now. And that is the way out of your relative position that doesn't look great,
so we look a little less Beverly Hills-ish.
but still feel it.
Yes, absolutely. Counselor Fox.
To that point, and with the comments about the size of the town, I think adding Brownsville might help, because I heard them comment at some meeting about a month ago that they are moving forward on something long overdue and going to be a cost impact.
There you go.
You're correct. Thank you. I was at that meeting too, and I'd forgotten about that. Yes, they have a huge sewage and water treatment plant project
And
coming up.
relatively tiny too.
They are tiny. Yeah, so that's great. Not that that helps us right now, but it is.
Feeling the pain.
I
Yeah.
think that many of these cities will be looking at.
Becoming an
doing a
exercise in
lot of
Schadenfreude.
this. Yeah. Okay, any other questions, comments for Doug? Oh, okay, well, thank you very much. We
Thank you for letting us
appreciate
serve Coburg.
that. It's always interesting and a little daunting to look at those rates.
Just a reminder that this will be on the agenda for the next 2 months.
Right.
So there's a long discussion period for this.
So
And to bring it back to, we have a new direction. They're looking for the drafting the ordinances in the resolution.
So what direction do you
Tonight,
need
we
from
need
staff?
that?
Right, we just need to have kind of a general idea of what they want us to bring back. to the
Yeah.
actual ordinance.
So you do have 2 meetings, both April and May, in which there'll be citizen comment, and hearings for this, give input. And there will be repeat discussions. Eventually, we do need to bring an ordinance, first reading, in,
No, the resolution, we're gonna do 2 public hearings on the resolution of public calendar. And so there'll be a resolution for the sewer rate and a resolution for the utility rate. First draft will come the next meeting. And have a public hearing and then the second meeting.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, the direction you need from council tonight is for staff to bring us back the rate schedule based on Doug's presentation. Is that correct? So that,
The resolution's coming back. I think it's in your staff report, and the resolution's coming that we bring to you next month, do you want the rate increase to be 2% on sewer and
Right.
water, or
That-
what,
That's what I was understanding you to say.
what direction are we
So-
thinking you can debate?
So that, and yes, so we do need staff direction to
Okay.
put the resolutions together. I just didn't know that the council would have enough time tonight to think about what form of rate increase you would like us to bring in that
I don't-
resolution.
I feel like we need to talk about it. Or tough
Do-
to just jump right in.
Well, sewer looks pretty reasonable, the suggestion at the 2% rate.
Yeah, I agree.
Any input from council on that?
Well, just looking at our brochure, it's saying that we've a placeholder of 1.5%
Placeholder.
on
Yes.
sewer and water at 3%. However, we should consider this does not reflect the final increases. And
That's right.
we
So-
talk about 8% operational costs. So we are informing the public the rate increase is necessary, to be significant,
Doing that.
and at a minimum would be what the placeholder was 1.5% for sewer. That's $1.30 a month, bringing it to $88 a month. And the water is 3% would add $1.59, bringing the base water rate to 54.50.
So it sounds like we missed that by a lot.
Well, those were placeholders. Those were, for instance, this is what that would look like. And so the direction that we need from council is, what do you need staff to bring back to us to move this conversation forward?
So the council can hold a public, so we can put out more information to the public. The council can hold a meeting in April. You will have a public hearing in April. People can come and give their opinions to the council. At that point, the council can provide staff direction with discussion in April as to what you want the resolutions to say. And then we can bring your resolutions to pass back to you in May. So, the council wants to move this forward. It's kind of important that we pass these in May, because this is what we're going to build our budget on. That needs to be adopted in June. And so that's yes.
And the rate increases would go into effect July 1. I mean, that's the beginning
Yes.
of our fiscal year.
Yes.
So that's got to be our end target, with my bill arriving in August or July. Counselor Fox.
Well, I say the sooner we communicate this to the public, the better, because our placeholder was off by over 8%. Correct and forthright, and send out the message pretty quickly that, I heard we sliver the differences, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and we have to bite the bullet. Well, if we have to bite the bullet, we need to communicate really easy.
So I just want to remind the council that your decision for those percentage increases was last April. And between then and now, and just as Doug has done his presentation, we had to recost our entire project. And that is relatively new information that we have gotten, and that isn't reflected in your decision from last April. And so very real, huge increase to our project.
So what do you need from us tonight in terms of direction?
I think we do.
I think that we have to put something out to the public that lets them know if you're considering the recommended increases, then we put something out to the public that based on information presented to the council, that these are the increases that are being considered. And you're welcome at the next 2 meetings to give your input. The council will receive a resolution on this in May.
So we're looking at 8%, then 8% water, and instead of the 2 and 2, that council's considering an 8% water increase in a whatever percent sewer.
If they're going with what Doug's
Recommendations.
are, that is the percentage we will use.
2% sewer increase.
Oh, you're saying 8% for water,
And
not 12?
12%.
well,
It's
Okay.
12.
yeah. Counselor Lehman.
One other item for possible direction. I know it may not be as economical and feasible to have the 2-year rapid increase and then level it off at 2% after that. It may be easy to swallow if we do break it into 3 years or even 4 years. Even though it puts us behind the curve for higher increases instead of 2%, 5 and 6 and 7 years out, it might be a lot easier to sell that. Like an 8% and 8% and 8%.
Thank you, Doug.
Oh,
It's like going to the dentist sometimes, you just gotta have it done.
you absolutely can do that. The implication would be that there would need to be some rescheduling of the capital, the near-term capital. So the near-term high rate increases are there to get you in a position to borrow the money that you would need and make coverage in order to have what you need to fund that capital program. Now, if you begin to reschedule, if you look at that capital and start to smooth it out a little bit, then more things are possible. But our initial assumption, again, we try to make sure that all surprises are good ones. So we model the kind of the worst case scenario is that those projects need to be done in those years where they're modeled. And if that's not the case, then more things are possible.
Now, if I recall correctly, and Ann and Brian, correct me here if I'm wrong, we sort of pushed the 3rd reservoir off.
Yeah, this isn't even,
Okay,
that
so
isn't
that
even
does,
on
that
the
is
table.
not included. That is replacing existing pipe. That is retrofitting our existing reservoirs to make them seismically more stable. That is drilling the 3rd well. That is running the pipe that needs to be run. So we've really cut this down to the bone. At this point, I don't remember that there's any extra fat, sinew, or fluff included in this. I'm seeing a head nod. Yeah, okay.
and One of the biggest things we talked about that for looking out into the future, big part of the water master. Am I not talking?
Oh, no, not for
People on
people.
TV.
Yeah. Thank you, Ann.
So one of the things that we should talk about is the deferred maintenance that we still have to do, right? That we're talking about doing. So that 12% doesn't account for the remaining asbestos concrete pipe that would be in the ground that would need to be replaced. The water master plan is only doing a portion of that, right? It's not all of it. Just a week ago, we found a AC pipe that was 8 feet deep that we didn't know where it was, but we ended up finding it 8 feet deep. Now, removing the AC pipe is very important for the future to get that out of the system. It's very frail. the older it gets. The backfill material around that was cobble rock, large cobble rock. And if that pipe bursts, it might be a while before we could get 8 feet deep. And it could be a sizable hole. Not saying that that's going to happen, but that's the potential of what could happen when we defer these type of projects. So it's not just the reservoir that we would push out way out into the future. It's also the remaining undersized pipe.
Counselor Lehman,
So question
Thank you,
on this
Brian.
chart. So it says Coburg proposed 60,
what slide is that?
slide 18. Coburg proposed water rates $63.34, 34 cents. What is the rate increase percentage to get to that proposed?
That, in those kinds of charts, it's the first rate increase. So
That's
that's
the
just one
11%.
step, the 12%.
That's the 12%.
Yep.
So the 12% is going to be $4, $5, $6, $7, $6.36. Okay. Doesn't sound as bad when you hear it that
When you
way.
break it down, yeah, I will agree. Oh, Counselor Fox,
When did you come up with the 12% as the necessary increase? We're hearing it tonight, but when did you arrive at that figure?
I just received, we just met.
Yeah, I mean, so as it was very recent. So as I said, since the last time you saw me, there was 2 waves of updates. The first wave, well, I don't mean to make it sound like an invasion or something, but the first wave was the growth assumptions being ratcheted down. The second wave, and really only applied to water, was the recosting of the capital program, and that was quite recent.
So I also think in the communication, we need to talk about how we held delayed things, and as a result of delays, we need to move forward, or else 12% becomes 24%.
so we'll work on crafting the message. Do you have what you need from council tonight to move forward? Yes. Okay. Thank you. That's a lot. I don't know. Live here too, and that's a lot. And I appreciate that things have escalated in a way that none of us anticipate. Thank you. Okay, and thank you, Doug. We're not shooting the messenger. I hope you understand that. We're all just going, wow.
I haven't met a city council that takes this stuff lightly.
Well, that's good. It's you, and you should not. You should not.
So one last comment. Maybe,
Counselor Lehman.
maybe in our next utility bill,
We'll craft a message and get input from all counselors on that, but it'll have to be a rapid turnaround too. So we can get this
It'll go out 2 days before.
right.
So
So,
it's not
no,
can
so
mail it.
we'll have to,
There's other ways
right.
to reach.
Yeah, we'll get it out. We've had this one on social media. We've had them posted places. Yeah, so we will continue to do that and get the message out to our community members. Okay, well, thank you all. And that's a lot to take in, but a lot of work to do. Okay, we're on to the Junction City Intergovernmental Agreement for Police Chief. And I believe Chief Larson is going to talk to us about what's going on there.
I am. Hi, everybody. So before you have an IGA between the city of Coburg and the city of Junction City. About a week or so ago, they reached out to me asking if I'd be interested in helping them with administrative services for the police chief position. Their chief retired and they need assistance with the police department. So I met with Dan, we talked about it, and then we had a meeting with Jason Canope, the city administrator for the city of Junction City. So what they proposed is 10 hours minimum, up to 20 hours maximum of administrative services for police chief. So in the agreement, we've talked about, I would work 30 hours a week for the city of Coburg instead of 40. So deduct my pay by 10 hours. Junction City would pay those 10 hours for services over there. And then I would work an additional 10 hours over there for additional administrative services for up to 20 hours. So 10 hours from Coburg, I'd be working over there instead of in Coburg. And an additional 10 hours. We currently work 4 10s, so I would probably just work my Friday, my first day off, to get to those hours. So, I believe in working with other cities and helping them out. Kind of an example is in 2018, we had a near fatal crash at the intersection by the Coburg Fire Department. I was able to call the state police because I had an officer on scene directing traffic, officer getting written statements, officer at the hospital. It was just overwhelming. So I had built a relationship with the Springfield commander of Oregon State Police. I made one phone call. I had a reconstruction team out there doing all of that work for us. So those relationships are super important. I don't know when I would need services from Junction City, but I just always like to have that already paved ahead of time. Coburg does have a succession plan. So if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, we are paramilitary. So we have a chain of command. So the chain of command is me, Sergeant Mike Lee, the senior officer, which would be Kevin Wilson, and then Dan Miller. And then we have a couple of reserve sergeants and then the reserve police officers. So we've already got a system in place. So I don't think I'm going to be missed during those 10 hours. And it's actually perfect timing because Sergeant Lee is on light duty for probably another month due to an injury. And just so you know, the officers, Mike Lee has over 2,000 hours of training and 18 years law enforcement. Kevin has about 1,500 hours and about 8 years law enforcement. Dan has 22 years of law enforcement and 1,900 hours of training. So I don't think Coburg's gonna miss a beat with me being gone for 10 hours. Anna and I discussed to protect the city of Coburg that we might look at having me do an employment contract with them. That would have to be approved through Ann to have a secondary job because the priority job is city of Coburg. But that's an option, either the IGA with Junction City or me just having a completely separate employment contract. And then that way Junction City would cover any liability that I would have over there. My job is going to be administrative. It's not going to be patrol. So they have some needs that need to be addressed. Some of them similar to ours. So that's what you have in the IGA, and then I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Fox.
Have you put any hours in already?
No. No.
Councilor Plain.
Yes, my question is, so Junction City is a bigger city, doesn't have that concession plan like we have? They don't have anybody that can step into that role?
Evidently not.
It's surprising. Yeah.
It is.
I mean, like, of course, we want to continue to help Junction City we have, but if it all affects Coburg and the services we're getting, that's where I get a little nervous. I mean, you're invaluable to what we have here, and so to have you gone more isn't ideal in my opinion. But you know, I think I'd like to hear what everybody else has to say, and I know, you know, reading what Chief Minter wrote is certainly interesting. I agree with a lot of what he says, but at the same time, I mean, it's your job. You're the one that does it daily, and if Ann feels like it's something that we can manage as a city and not lose, you know, coverage and geez, that you have, then, you know, I think weigh that, but yeah, just kind of thinking out loud there.
And this is fairly short term, March to the end of June, so
Yeah.
that's fairly short term. I guess the
what you just talked about, you know, cutting your hours, decreasing your hours in Coburg to 30 hours a week, you'd still be eligible for benefits for your insurance, health insurance and all through Coburg.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Correct.
Because that's considered that you're meeting that threshold. But then if we did, rather than the IGA with Junction City, you just go to an employment agreement with them, did I?
Well, Anna and I talked, I believe that would look like I would just have an agreement with Junction City for the 20 hours and it would just cut out Coburg completely. It would be like having a second job.
Right, okay, I just needed to make sure.
Yeah, correct.
I understood that correctly.
And I can explain a little bit of
Okay.
background. So when Junction City came to us, they asked us for an IGA.
Right,
And so we worked with our legal team on an IGA. The questions that I had and concerns that were being raised is, well, how does that, what is the liability for Coburg on that? So we did check in with our insurance company who could not help us because they represent us both. So they just said, sorry. And so
CIS,
we,
is that
yeah,
correct?
so we did, and we checked in with legal. You know, the question came up is, do we really need this IGA, or can we have a second option of just having Junction City hire him outright?
For that
For
period of
a
time.
short
Cool.
period of
Right.
time. And we would cut his hours in Coburg, and so he wouldn't be paid for those hours. Junction City absorbs all the liability. And Coburg absorbs no liability. So that is why there's kind of two ideas on the table. Both Junction City is comfortable with either or. I've spoken with them.
Mr. Lehman.
So the original IGA with the 3.5 months and the hours that we're looking at was totaling $36,400. Would be less than that with the direct personal services contract with Junction City, but those funds could be backfilling police services here, so we might have actual increase in street patrols. If you want to use those funds that way. Do we have the manpower for that? I don't know.
We do. I mean, we're currently doing it.
So,
We wouldn't be increasing our manpower
No,
with the
correct.
funds that we
I'm sorry,
receive, not
no.
right now. I mean, that's not something that you can just ramp up. That has to be a budgeted, you know, and to increase our patrols in Coburg, that is another officer or more reserve. Correct.
Yes.
Mr. Fox.
Okay, so I have my reservations. To see Junction City extending the contract, wanting to extend it if they haven't filled the void. And your example is well put, but that was an emergency. And it seems like a lack of vision and planning here. So, and who would, how, workman's comp, well, how would that be covered?
That's going, if he's hired by Junction City, they have to cover his workman's comp.
So then our
Yeah, I think that's
liability
an
for
idea.
that is gone.
So,
one other compromise.
Counselor Lehman.
One other compromise, I mean, I did say Junction City's emergency is not our emergency, but we want to still support them. It could be that you retain your hours here and just personal services contract for 10 hours a week on your Fridays.
We could, whatever you guys feel more comfortable with. We were just trying to give you an option between the two. Just to make sure liability rise, because I know that was brought up, that Coburg is covered.
So Chief, what would happen if we just said no? What does Junction City do?
I don't know. They've been a pretty tight spot. Part of the reason why they reached out to me is I worked there for 18 years. So I have knowledge.
Quantity.
Well, that and they kind of unique. They have their own dispatch center. It's a secondary 911 center. I supervised that for a couple of years. They have a jail. I'm familiar with the jail. They have a 2-cell jail with 4 beds. So they kind of reached out because I live there and I have the knowledge and hopefully the ability to help them if that's, if I'm able to. So I think that's why they reached out to me specifically.
So are there resources within the state when I assume that this happens to other communities? I know Cottage Grove is having an issue right now. Is there?
Well, they've reached out to Eugene. I think Eugene is helping them, Eugene and the sheriff's department. Yeah. Because they had reached out to one of my coworkers who works for Eugene Police Department and he just wasn't able to because of Cottage Grove needs. So it really becomes it's challenging.
Councilor Wells?
Yeah, thank you. I was just about ready to hit the icon that says raise my hand. Chief, I think the concern is that if Junction City is having such a hard time finding a chief, are we making it easier for them by allowing you to work there part-time? And then ultimately, if I'm on the city council of Junction City, I'm saying, let's make this guy an offer. Let's have him come over to Junction City full-time. And we don't want to risk that. You're loved here in the community. And the last thing we want to do is lose you. And if you kind of put your foot in the water, are we not at risk of losing you permanently? I'd almost rather say, hey guys, sorry, he's ours and you're going to have to solve your problem another way. If there's an emergency, sure, he'll fill in, but we're not letting him go. I just worry that your toe in the water is going to be enough for them to ultimately make you an offer to come over there permanently. And we don't want to lose you.
They could make him an offer to come over there permanently at any point in time.
Well, true. That's true. That is true.
We are aware and we know that nationally, police forces are struggling with recruitment. And so that's always a risk that is looming out there. And I appreciate, Chief, very much that you have a succession plan in place. I very much appreciate that because losing a person, and I always say, rather than hit by a bus, I'd rather say, well, you won the lottery.
That sounds better.
I don't want anybody hit by a bus. But that is always a risk for any city. Councilor Fox.
They have a bigger police force, obviously, in the town. Don't they have a sergeant? You mentioned the sergeant going for you here.
Yeah, I'm not sure of whatever issues they have. I haven't been in the building in years, so I'm not sure why they have that need.
I did ask that question of the city administrator of why it is that the sergeant could not step up. And he said that his responsibilities to the management of their officers pretty much filled his time. And that probably wasn't a good choice on their part.
So it really, what we're talking about really is administrative duties. Can you help us understand what those are, Chief?
Well, that would be looking at, I think that they have issues like lack of enforcement on traffic. Because I know that Coburg, we do more traffic stops than they do as a bigger city. So I think there's some issues to address there. I live in the community, so I hear lots of stuff. So I think that's one of the issues to address. Overall management of the dispatch center as far as scheduling, making sure they have training. There's a couple of policies that need to be tweaked a little bit for some issues I've heard about. Just overall management of the police department. So pretty much everything. And they need some leadership. That's why it's only a short-term agreement.
Yes, Councilor Lehman.
Yeah, so it is proposed to be a 3.5 month plan. How would you feel with doing your Fridays 10 weeks, 10 hours Friday and then continuing with the current hours here.
That was kind of my plan. So you're talking the 40 hours here plus additional 10 on Friday.
Gonna contribute to your retirement plan by
That-
increasing your hours.
That's true. Thank you. Part of it, honestly, it depends on what the need is, because as a leader, if I came into Coburg, I would want to work with every officer, and some of them work different shifts. So I need a little bit of flexibility to be able to do that appropriately, because if I go over there, I'm gonna, give it my best during the duration that I'm there. So I have thought about this since we met with city administrators. Floating in my head is for me to be over there on like a Wednesday, because then I would have Monday, Tuesday here in Coburg, Wednesday be in Junction City, Thursday be in Coburg, and then Friday be in Junction City, because I don't want too much time span without them seeing the leadership of the organization.
You
I
could
just think
split
because
it- Could split it to be 10 weeks there, but 5 hours, 5 hours Wednesday and Friday. And
I
split the
could,
time.
correct. And honestly, it just depends on how much need they have, which I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I haven't been in the building. But we had talked about it being 30 hours, just so I had a little bit of flexibility, for 20 hours in Junction City. But I mean, it's
I'm just hearing quite a bit of resistance,
correct.
dropping your 40 hours to 30. But trying to see a compromise of schedule where you're here Monday and Tuesday, 10 hours each day, Wednesday split 5 hours there, 5
Yeah.
hours here.
I think we have to leave that up to.
I'm just saying that's an
administration.
option to consider.
So we would have to leave that up to them.
I want to clarify, one of the counselors said, if Ann, you think this is a good idea. This was brought to the city. Larry and I have discussed it. We've heard Junction City. But I think Larry and I take this very seriously and understand that this is not something that we would go looking for. We wouldn't go looking for this. So is it a good idea to let your chief go? Nobody's gonna say yes to that, but, and that's why I wanted this to come to city council, and I told Junction City that this is not my decision. I'm not gonna make it. This is a city council decision, and they have to make it in the best interest of our community. So I want to make that clear. But agencies do support one another. So we're bringing this to you with all the information we have, realizing that this is really an important decision. And so
One last question, Dr.
But in his employment agreement, he has the right for a second job. Without,
in our policy, it allows for the city administrator to allow for an employee to work a second job. That's a request that is granted based on how it will affect their work.
So individually.
It's
Evaluate.
handled individually.
Councilor Blaine?
I just have a very basic question. Do you want to go do that? Would you like to do this? Or do you
I
think-
live there, used to work there, so I'm, committed to the community. I think I could help them. I think that they need an outside view for some of their issues.
Sorry, one follow-up.
Yes.
It's within a month, right?
Mhm.
Over struggles a little bit. Is there a way to pull this back and have?
Yeah, there's a termination part in the IGA on that. Yeah,
But
correct. And I think it's 24-hour notice.
if we didn't go with the IGI, then he would just give notice
Yeah.
to Judge
Yeah,
City that
correct.
this is not working.
So we have two things to consider. Actually, three. Do we do this? Do we do it with an IGA? Or do we do it as a personal service agreement? Just allow you that second job. Correct?
at 10 or 20 hours.
Well, I think we what I'm hearing is it is probably the 20 hours. To make it reasonable. And this is an unusual circumstance.
It is.
I think that
Correct.
this retirement came out of the blue for the city of Junction City and perhaps for the, it was a rapid decision that was made from my understanding, so. Counselor Fox, did you have something else to say? Did I see your hand over there?
Well, yeah, based on the insurance thing, I think it's gonna be, it's either we don't do it or it's two different jobs.
Because of the liability issue. Counselor Lehman, anything else?
You ready for a motion?
Counselor Wells, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Then I'm ready to entertain a motion. Again, remembering the three, it's either no, yes to the IGA, or yes to a personal service agreement. So those can be, choose which motion you'd like to make. I can't make it.
To permit Chief Larson to enter into a personal services contract with the city of Junction City for his services of 20 hours per week. That would reduce Chief Larson's time in Coburg by 10 hours per week.
We'll have a second. Second for Counselor Blaine. So we have a motion by Counselor Lehman and a second by Counselor Blaine. And did you want just a raising of hands?
No, it needs to be, yeah, that's fine, and call for Alan, and is it just open-ended then?
Thank you. It is for the 3.5 months.
Thank you for that clarification, Sam. So I will consider then, I need to know all those in favor, please raise your hand. Fox? No? Okay. And Counselor Well, okay, and any opposed?
Abstain.
Can I ask you the reason?
The reason is I don't want to be a thorn in the bush, but I really feel that this was rather quick. We just don't have total resources. It seems to be stretching thin and ambiguous. We're all opposed.
It sounds like you're opposed.
Have himself into it.
So we have 3 in favor. That would, Counselor Wells was a yes.
Yes.
And 1 opposed. So motion carries 3-1.
Thank you. And I'll keep Ann apprised of everything that I'm doing.
Thank you. We appreciate this and we know this is a difficult decision for all involved. And again, Chief, you are loved in this community, so we do this with trepidation.
Yeah.
Yes. I wrote that down. Thanks for that clarification, Sammy. And now we have Planning Commission recommendations to council, and Ms. Winter will be giving those.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I am before you this evening to present some recommendations that Planning Commission wished to pass on to City Council. On January 18th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing for the second phase of the Weikert subdivision. Out of discussion about the subject or about the subdivision, some concerns about traffic were raised. Directly from the minutes, the first recommendation is that Commissioner Marshall stated that in conjunction with the recommendation for approval of the Coburg Creek subdivision first edition, he would like to recommend to City Council to direct staff to assure that the planned improvements to Macy Street, North Willamette Street, and Harrison Street were complete on or before the developer completes the connection of the subdivision to Macy's Street prior to the subdivision being completed. It is staff's intention to align the projects as best as possible. And the second recommendation from Planning Commission to Council is that Commissioner Marshall moved, seconded by Commissioner Derby, to request the mayor and city council to formally address the issue of the intersection of North Willamette Street and Van Dyne Street, to direct staff to research possible modifications to this intersection as being a safe route to school. The motion passed 4-0. And so that item has been added to the staff work plan for the upcoming year. I did want to make sure to pass both of those recommendations on to council and to ask for further direction for staff if council would like.
It's my, it is my understanding that certainly the second, seconded by Commissioner Marshall and Commissioner Derby, that those things, that is being addressed in our transportation committee. So I'm sure that we would need a motion out of council at this point to address that. That is being addressed in the transportation committee or team at this point. And then we have added the first section is on the work plan for public works. So I'm unsure what sort of a motion we would make within council.
Can I clarify?
Yes, thank you, Ann.
The second part is in the work plan. So the North Willamette and Van Dyne Street intersection is what was added to the work plan.
Right.
The first part is not in the work plan.
Macy, wait a minute, I'm confused. So I thought Macy, North Willamette and Harrison are in the work plan.
No.
No, no, okay, my error, thank you for that.
They are taking place, though.
Yeah, so.
Right.
Brian, do you
Yeah.
want to speak a little bit about the plans for Macy, North Willamette and Harrison as they relate to the developers' plans for Macy Street?
Well, I can't really speak for the developer on when the connection would be made from the subdivision to Harrison Street, that section of Macy. My guess is it's probably not going to be anytime soon. We still haven't built out phase 1. So, and the infrastructure hasn't even been started for phase 2, right? So we know that infrastructure usually takes 6 or 7 months once they start, right? So looking at what we have planned for Harrison, Macy, and North Willamette, we're looking at rebuilding those streets this time next year. And the reason for that is the extra funding through the small city allotment grant for $150,000 to help offset the costs of the reconstruction in North Willamette. So that's why we we're aligning water projects along with these street projects, right? So Harrison, Macy, and North Willamette are all getting that went out to bid for the water project Friday. So that portion will be done sooner. But as far as the two aligning, I think they're probably going to align perfectly without any nudge to the developer. But I understand what the Planning Commission is asking for. But again, even if Macy Street, let's future trip, if you would, and think about the street going through, right? So they put the infrastructure in, they punched the road in through to Harrison Street. How much traffic are you going to get through that with only maybe 10 houses being sold in the subdivision. Probably not as much as if it was full build out, right? So the traffic impacts are going to be extremely low. And it would be for, you know, a very short window of time. But if, let's say, worst case scenario, the street project gets shelved for whatever reason, right? The economy falls through and you know, to get that project done a year from now costs us 3 times as much. We don't know that. I don't know what we could tell the developer because the phase 2 has been approved, if they can or cannot put that road through and continue. That's a question for legal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just reading this now for the first time. I think my recommendation is gonna be don't do anything. If there's a condition of approval that's appropriate to be made in conjunction with a subdivision or something, then you make it in that context. It's not appropriate for staff or anyone else to come asking the council to make a recommendation that's really something that you couldn't do through a condition of approval. So I would just keep your hands off of it.
Okay, and that was sort of my feeling on that I wasn't sure what we certainly acknowledge that this concern is coming to us from Planning Commission. And we are working forward with our Public Works Department, with Planning Commission, and with the developer to make sure that things align. And it will be addressed within the Transportation Committee. And we will move it forward that way. Does that give you enough information to move forward?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we need to appoint a budget officer. So as part of our budgeting committee, part of our budgeting responsibilities, each year at this time, we appoint a budget officer. In the past, that has been our finance director, because at this point in time, Anne is serving in both roles as our city administrator and finance director. We would like to put forward that she be appointed as our budget officer.
Make a motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will accept a motion at this point.
Unless anybody has questions. And I move to appoint city administrator Ann Heath as the budget officer for 2023-24.
Okay. Okay.
Oh.
So we have a motion from Councilor Blaine and a second from Councilor Fox. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, so 4 in favor and none of any opposed. None opposed, the motion carries. Congratulations. You've been wearing that hat anyway. Okay, council goals and work plan. Ann, do you need to speak to that?
Yeah,
for
so
us?
the goals were set at your February 4th retreat. And I hope you had a chance to see that there were a few yellow highlighted items on the work plan that were added during the retreat at the request of the council. So the work plan as it sits right now is a final work plan unless the council has something that they want to add to it tonight. You did not change your preamble, so it remains the same and reflects 7 overlying goals. And so those are what the staff use now to create their budgets and their work plans for the next fiscal year. So just to be clear that we are adopting goals for fiscal year 23-24. Some of the things that are on the goals we're working on right now, and they're ongoing goals that are going to continue on for this year, next year, and possibly a couple years to come. So they are just retained on there. Council can discuss and adopt when they're comfortable.
Any input from counselors on the goals and priorities?
I forgot one thing.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
There is a goal on here that was requested, as you know, the committees put forward their recommendations for the work plan. The Finance and Audit Committee did request that there was something added to the goals, and that would be that the council consider combining the Finance Audit Committee and the Budget Committee. And that's a discussion in itself and probably should be discussed with the Budget Committee. But part of that is the small amount of volunteers that we do have available to take on this. And they believe that the consistency of following finance throughout the year would be helpful for finance and audit oversight. And they thought perhaps it was possible to have a subcommittee of the Budget Committee that served, but that perhaps there wasn't a need for two committees in Coburg. There's history on the committee. Sammy has that. She's prepared. This is why we chose to do this. This year we did this. So I think that's all relevant information for the council to consider when the time comes to have this discussion. And possibly at Budget Committee, to make sure the Budget Committee agrees with this, because it could impact them as a committee.
So we would get through our budgeting cycle and then revisit that. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Probably a discussion at the second Budget Committee once they've completed their business,
Okay.
possibly.
Okay. Any other input, changes, questions? I have one, just a Scribner error. I think it's under operational capacity. And it's on the second page, so that would be item 12 or page 64. The third block down, it says public works staff training on playground safety, inspections, and landscaping and lawn. I think it's lawn.
Good catch.
Well, that one just left out to me. I know, well, after reading the IGA, I was very sensitive to that. Okay, so do we need a motion to accept?
I move to adopt the preamble statement and work plan A for fiscal year 2023, 2024. Second.
Okay, so that was a motion by Counselor Fox.
As amended.
As amended. And a second by Counselor Blaine. All in favor signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Thank you, Counselor Wells.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the council goals and work plan for fiscal year 23-24 passes 4-0. We'll have we've gotten a budget officer, so should I say budget officer? Well, no. I will say that city administrator Ann Heath will give us a staff report.
So this is the full staff report, just a couple things to call to your attention.
No, we're not, you guys,
No.
sorry.
Keep
Oh,
going.
we're gonna do the greenhouse oil.
Sorry,
Oh,
sorry,
thank you.
and
You
then the
told me
employee
that, Sammy,
housing,
and
yeah.
I totally lost it.
That's okay.
Sorry. Okay,
So you guys, in your red folder, you guys have,
Staff report.
you received an application for an OLCC license, and new applications have to come to
Council. That's what this is. It's for property at 91070 North Willamette Street. Going to be called Business is the Greenhouse. Counselor Alan Wells is the business owner, property owner, and will not be voting. If he was here, he would be, yeah, on this side of the table. So
And this is for,
it is for a full service liquor license for the food courts.
it is for the food court. Okay.
Yeah. And what your duty is to recommend the OLCC grant or deny the license. You also get the chance on any liquor license to review them annually if there's an issue.
But OLCC.
Issues.
Issues them, we just give the go ahead to take this to OLCC, correct? And I like the name change from the barnyard to the greenhouse.
I don't know if you want my input or not, just ask.
Counselors?
I just have one question. When is it anticipated phase 2 would go in?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, right now it's just too expensive to build, you know, a project similar to what we did with phase 1. So this is a temporary use and we are calling it that, but that temporary use might stretch into 2 or 3 years. We don't know. But in the meantime, this will be a lot of fun. So I'm hoping you'll approve this.
I misunderstood my reading of the planning minutes. I thought there were 2 phases to the food truck thing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, in essence, we're doing this all at one time. We scaled back, we're not building the building. It was just too expensive and we're putting up in its place a larger greenhouse, which is again, a temporary structure, but it will be, you know, it will be for indoor seating purposes. It will be heated. And so we're doing, I guess, the entire project at one time, except we're not building the building in the south end of the site.
Any other questions?
Um,
Oh,
Just-
Counselor Lehman.
Where does Sir Wells have to declare potential or actual?
No, he is abstaining. He is recusing himself from the vote.
Based on.
Based
Right.
on participation as owner. Yes. So. Any other questions? No? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to recommend Oregon Liquor Control Commission grant the greenhouse a full on-premises liquor license for property located at 91070 North Willamette Street.
We have a motion by Counselor Blaine and a second by Counselor Fox. So all those in favor? Please raise your hands. 3. Any opposed? 3 in favor, none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. That'll be exciting.
Oh, we're jumping out of our shoes, excited about it. Yes.
I like the drawings, the artist rendering. That'll be fun to watch.
It'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, it really will be. Thank you.
All right, now can we go to staff report? Am I in the right? No, now.
The next item will be for the employee housing agreement. I believe it's Brian Harmon, or who's the presenter on that one?
Okay. It was in the consent agenda, so I can present on it.
Well, we moved it around and.
Yeah.
So I apologize for being out of
Oh.
step on that.
So we have a house at Stallings Lane, purchased when we purchased the well property. We did not take possession of that house until we paid the property off in full, which happened a couple months ago. Which means that there's a residential home that we can put a renter into. In discussion regarding the house being at the site of the well, the future well site, and construction going on there, as well as would, be in the best interest of the city to have people living in the city limits or near the city limits that could respond to on-call in a very quick time. We decided that it is in the best interest of the city to place a couple of Public Works employees in the house. The other piece of that is there's a large piece of property that needs to be maintained there. There's a garden side to it that is quite large, and then yard around the house, and then other mowing on a different piece of the property. So part of the thought process between Brian and I was that we would have someone there who was providing us some form of security for not just the project, but for the developed well site, which is a public infrastructure. And that we would have caretakers for the property because it's substantial amount of outdoor care until the city decides what to do with it. And then we would have the benefit of a very quick on-call response. And so that's kind of the background on why we chose to try to develop an employee agreement to be a leasee in the house. So we asked legal to help us with this. It's not something that's usual. I looked online for examples and I couldn't find a lot, so that's why I kind of went to legal. Benita has a similar situation, so they did offer us a copy of what they had drawn up. And so we did come up with a draft agreement to come to council. Councilor Lehman did do a substantial review of this, and I can tell that you spent a lot of time at it, and I thank you. I appreciate that very much. Raised some really good questions. I forwarded those to Ann this afternoon. And so at this point, the questions that were raised are very good. I'm not sure we can work through them all tonight. And you had a chance to review them, so you can provide your opinion on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, should turn off my mic. There were some good comments in there, and I think it's mainly a discussion of I thought the need or want to have the people in there by April 1st. So that may be the discussion, is how do you make that happen and make sure that you get all these revisions considered.
I think the April 1st date is movable. I mean, I know that the guys, right now, they are living with other people, so they're obviously wanting housing and are very interested in this, but my job is to represent the city. And so I feel that if the comments that were made on this are substantial enough that legal thinks we need to take a little bit more time with this, then I feel strongly that we need to take a little bit more time with it and make sure we have it correct. And so I think that you should have your chance to explain your biggest concerns. But I have no problem with us allowing.
Sorry, I didn't get to you earlier. We were in Puerto Vallarta and our plane was delayed and at home until Sunday. And I picked up the packet on Monday and I didn't read this until this morning at 5:30, and I left voices messages for you at 8:30 and then brought it down around noon. rental properties since 1976, so I've read through a lot of rental agreements. And I fully support the use of this for the. I just want to make sure that, you know, when you have happy employees and the agreements are working, that's great. When you have unhappy employers, maybe things don't run so smooth if they're not really airtight. So I thought you did a very nice job of merging them into here. I didn't hear whether Anne wanted more time to review it. If she didn't, I think we could still.
I would love that. She did.
Oh, okay. The only last thing on it, the very last page of mine, I'd like to spend a moment on, because it's not tied into this, but I think there's a way that you could have the employees stay there. Is on the difference between discounted housing and fair market value by raising the rent, but then that dollar amount could be paid back to the employees as overtime, so that they are held harmless on that tax thing. And we're kind of held harmless on that as well by raising the rent. See what I'm trying to go there. I hate them to be pay taxes on what the IRS says is a fringe benefit that exceeds the fair market value.
Is it being offered below market value?
So $600 a month for the house. So if you've seen the house, you might want to go view it, but it is an old house and it has a lot of issues. And the city is actually spending some money just bringing it up so somebody can live in it. Because literally, there was a place in the living room floor that was, if you stepped wrong in it, you might go through the floor. There were some things that needed fixed, lighting, some electrical, some appliance work. So to make it livable for anybody. It is a substantial old house with little update. So having said that, I know that rent is high right now, but there's also the city is benefiting greatly from them being here. I wanted to clarify, Councilor Lehman, are you thinking that they would pay a higher rate but be paid for the time that they work on the property?
However, whatever work was approved for them to do is fine. I just think we have to either get an MAI appraiser or market analysis by a licensed realtor. And if it's only $600, you don't have an issue. But without having seen the property, I know rents are high. If it were actually, you know, $1,200 that goes to fair market value, then they technically would have to pay income tax, not income tax. They'd have to file it on box 1 employee W-2 form. And I would hate to have them do that. And if it were a higher rent, and then we were able to offset that by offering an additional employment so that they're held harmless, so to speak, and we are too.
And I'd like some time to review that, in with possibly, because my question is, if there is an expectation that they are working on the property, and
I think there's a distinction between, you know, regular maintenance versus improvements and repairs.
right,
So whether their work was on the property that they would be paid for that would be fine. But not to be for what is all the usual security in this and or lawn care, regular gutter cleaning, that kind of stuff.
a lot of the work will be done outside of the leased area. So it's not just mowing the lawn and the house that they're in. It's taking care of property outside of the leased area.
That seems like that would be something Public Works would do anyway, so it would be part of employment.
So seems that we have the option we don't, what I'm hearing is that we really don't have the option to make a motion to approve this tonight. What I'm going to ask council is if you are comfortable with Ann Heath and Ann Davies taking Counselor Lehman's comments and melding them into an agreement and going ahead and executing the agreement. Or if you want to hold it off to next council meeting.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Oh, yes, sorry, Council Box.
Given the amount of discussion that's going on now, why was this initially put in the consent agenda?
We didn't get the plans until today, and we pulled it sort of out of consent agenda at the last minute, and that's a very valid question.
So a lot of times if it's contracts, just simple contracts, they're in the consent agenda. And the council reviews them and they can pull them out at any time. And that's essentially what Counselor Lehman did, is said, I have a lot of comments on this. I'd like this to be considered more than just in the consent agenda.
This is fairly unique. One other question is, I heard the term quick responder. Did we give any consideration to a police officer and a utilities worker sharing the building?
No, but all our police officers are married, so I doubt very much they're gonna want to share with the public works guys, but
That is something that I have asked in the past, and I think that, you know, in many instances, when first responders are on call, there is an on-call room provided or facility. So that may come up again.
yeah, I was gonna say,
Okay.
it doesn't mean that in the future a police officer couldn't be there.
Right.
It's just right now.
Right
what we
now,
have
it's
is
not.
to Public Works.
Well,
Right.
one of the things that we did when we first took over the house was look around the city and say, you know, who is in a position to be able to move into this place and be able to take care of it, right? There are future plans for the house that have not been vetted, I guess is the best way to put it. So I looked around Public Works, knowing that most of the police force had stable housing. And we looked around Public Works and two of the guys who, and all the guys in Public Works get along great, but these two get along very well. Right now they're cohabitating with their parents. So this is a good fit for them. And with the on-call thing, right now, everybody in Public Works, and I believe everybody in the police department, lives outside of Coburg. So it was kind of like, oh, great. Now we may be able to get some affordable housing for the lower end Public Works employees. So somebody could live in Coburg and be able to respond. You know, if they were renting a normal house inside of town, you're absolutely right. It could be $1,500 to $2,200 a month, you know, even for a small farmhouse. So this is like the best of all worlds. We get somebody to watch over the place, do some caretaking, be able to respond quicker to after hours calls, and you know, somebody that's going to take care of the place for the future needs of that house, and whatever those needs are, we just don't know.
Alan has his hand up, please.
Counselor Wells? We can't hear you.
Alan, did you have a comment?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Very sorry. I don't have any comment. I am listening, but no, really don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's a great idea. I think as long as, you know, Ann's happy with the contract and we cover our bases, it seems like a pretty basic. Tenants. Obviously, there's a few differences, but for the most part, I have tenants that do maintenance. All that out as long as the exterior and it's nothing that licensed contractor would need to be doing. And I'm happy with it. So, yeah.
Okay, so. Do I have a motion? To let Ann Heath and.
I'll make a motion.
Well, great, and Ann Davies incorporate Counselor Lehman's questions, comments, and into the contract. And we can, okay, so here's where we put this off and bring it back at next council meeting to be approved? Or do we rely on them to do the changes and approve it? And move it forward? Comfortable with that, Ann and Ann?
I think he's gonna make the motion of
Yeah.
how you think it should go.
Yeah, I would make a motion. Suggested changes that legal and city administrator feel are appropriate as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion by Counselor Lehman and a second by Counselor Fox to approve the employee housing agreement on Stallings Lane after review by Ann Davies and Ann Heath. Who are good? All those in favor, raise your hand.
Second.
Aye.
There was a second by Counselor Fox. Okay, any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Okay, now are we on to staff report? Thank you.
Okay. Just a few things, and then if you have questions for staff, you can ask them. The city administrator recruitment has been open. It's posted. I've actually got some comments back from people who have seen it. It looks like April 10th will be the first collection of the applications in process to see if there's enough to hold a interview process. And then the final interviews will be announced after that. The water project, there is a copy of an LOI that I did file with Business Oregon attached to this packet. And we did get a note back that said, yes, they had received it. They will be looking at it around March 15th. I asked to be considered for $8.5 million. That is more than we probably need, but it's best to ask for, you know, because we don't have to borrow everything. It's a drawdown as you go. So, and that actual application will come before the city council to approve to be submitted. So you'll have chances to discuss that. There's some notes here about what's going on in the water project. Otherwise, the Premier RV, which there's a letter in your red folder or in the citizen testimony. We have invited them to the work session on March 28th so that there can be more discussion with Mr. Williams and the city council on this subject. We'll meet with him tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. To kind of get a better discussion on what he's thinking and what are some of the complications? So we will be discussing, his ideas. We've already responded with some information back to him, but we will meet with him tomorrow. Let's see, was what else I wanted to call, oh, staffing wise for the finance department. We did hold the interview process today. We have 2 outstanding candidates. That, it goes to show that you don't have to have a whole bunch of candidates. We have 2. It will be a hard decision. We'll be considering it. But we're very happy with the 2 candidates we had. And I would say that we will have a hire that will come out of it. It's most likely would be hired into the account with the intention that they would train with and be eligible to be promoted to finance director when they're ready. So I think both of the candidates that we interviewed have that potential. And so I think we were all happy with that. So there'll be more information to come on that. I haven't made a decision yet. I'm considering many different things about each candidate before I make a decision. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Want to talk about the insert from local government basics that is inserted in our packet?
Yeah. So I did send this out in a Friday report. I don't know if you guys caught that, but there is an insert in here from Locke for governmental officials. And it's excellent. There is a lot of really great information. It looks like this, the front page of it. Fantastic information in this magazine. Really a great job on their part. So I really encourage you to work through it and read it. I mean, you can read a little bit at a time. It has a lot of information about property taxes and state shared revenues and just a little bit more understanding on how those things are managed. I encourage you to read it.
The meat sort of was towards the back of the packet in my opinion.
Yeah.
The beginning.
And if you want just a clean copy or read it online or on your computer, we did send it to you last Friday.
So just to clarify, there's been interest in the city administrator position, but because all of the applicants will go.
Yeah,
to
we
our-
won't see them
Yes,
until the
okay.
until it closes.
Answered my own question.
April 10th is it's open still. But the
Okay.
first review of applicants would be April 10th. If at April 10th, there's enough applicants to conduct an interview process, then we'll move forward.
Okay. We'll be notified at that point. Councilor Blaine.
I'm not sure if you guys, if you have this, but like Douglas Fiber, do you have an idea of kind of their timelines for sections of the city that they're in?
I haven't got an update on that lately. I know that they're working, they just crossed the street and they're coming up. And so City Hall's gonna get this soon. IWF got it this week on that side of the street. So I'm not really sure about that. I can check into that and ask them for an
I know they're
update.
doing it.
Yes, they are.
'Cause I'm like, they did my street, yeah, ready to plug it in.
They're great.
Are you?
Wow.
Well, they haven't come down Austin and Abbey yet, so you don't get it till we get it. Apparently.
Well, they've been digging up the street for a while. so-
Yes, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Okay.
That's a really good piece of work that the city did. We invited them in, we worked out, we did really work with the fiber consortium. To try to make that happen. And so I'm really happy that this has worked out.
I think it's taking them much longer than perhaps they anticipated. I mean, they've been doing a lot of trenching. We've all noticed. All of the marks on the street.
I can get an update and try to send it out this Friday, so you will know kind of what sections of town they're going to, but they're moving fast.
Yeah, they really are. They're doing that.
Okay, council comments. I think we're down to that point now. We do have the liaison appointments made and I sent those out. Everybody should have gotten them. I'll just reiterate. So Counselor Wells will be on the Audit and Finance Committee. I'm really looking forward to that, Counselor Wells, with your business background. I think that would be a terrific asset to that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, really? I do.
Much appreciated.
Kathy Engelbretson will be lead on the but with John Fox, Counselor Fox as backup on that. So if one is unable to attend, then the other can cross in. Counselor Fox will remain the primary on the Lane Act, and he's been on that for a number of years, and I really appreciate his expertise on that, but with backup and a learning curve for Counselor Engelbretson. Planning Commission will be Counselor Blaine. And I think, again, I think that'll be a terrific ad. I think you'll be an asset. And I've learned so much from being on Planning Commission, so it's pretty interesting. And Police, Counselor Lehman will be the liaison with Police, and I know that the Chief is looking forward to that, and I know that you are too. I tried to take your preferences into account on all of these. And Mayor Bell will be doing the LCOG board, the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Policy Organization, Main Streets, and Park and Tree Committee until we add another counselor, which I hope we're all recruiting for. But I'm looking forward to, I'm already on LCOG and board and the MPO, and I'm looking forward to being on Main Streets and Park Committee. I think that'll be terrific because I like those things. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Any counselor comments? Questions? Oh, Counselor Fox, of course.
I appreciated getting the Lane Workforce partnership.
Yes, that was interesting.
It's very interesting because mine's totally in Spanish. And yeah, I took Spanish 1 3 times. Not successful. I think this is a reminder from the spirit.
English, and I found it fascinating. Perhaps I'll bring my English one in and share it with you. You can learn and you can upgrade your Spanish. Yeah. In English, unless you check the wrong box, and then it'll be in Spanish or the right box. Counselor Lehman, anything? Counselor Wells, anything that you would like to share for the good?
No, thanks. I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you.
All right. Well, fantastic. Gone a little bit over, but on my watch, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at, oh Lord, my watch.